All right, so it's a rainy Thursday morning. First thing in the morning, and as people know, I've had to look after my wife because she severed a tendon a few weeks ago, or 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, yeah, so I've been really kind of taking on both roles, both parental roles, and also looking after the house and stuff. So I'm shockingly starting at 9 a.m. rather than like 4 or 5 or 6 a.m. So, anyways, all that aside, it's just a great day to be doing this, to be indoors and looking out at the rain instead of being in it. And this is a great score to start my day with. I really enjoyed this. I would say, Christian, like there are, like if there was any like overall critique about the presentation of the score of this evaluation, then I would just basically say, I think that you're using maybe some sounds that come with Dorico or some other kind of thing, and there's a certain dryness to them, and there's a certain prominence of the winds. Maybe that's just the way that you have it mixed, but they seem to really kind of cry out over the strings quite a bit and be a little out of balance in general. And I'm wondering if, I mean, I know that there is now Note Performer for Dorico. I'm wondering if that would be a better option for you, just in terms of having just more naturally balanced and natural sounding instruments. Okay, so starting off right at the beginning, I mean, there's a lot of little bits and pieces that I will help you out with in terms of notation and balance and things like that. But we'll do it as we go, rather than having any blank statements right at the beginning. Okay, so or overall statements at the beginning. So yeah, so you're starting with divisi in three for your violas and solo violin, and soft horns in the background. So that works great. About the only thing that I would caution here is that solo violin plus solo clarinet at the same dynamic level. I kind of feel that, that I mean, it's interesting that you do not have any crescendo here at all, right? You just keep everything soft and you let the direction of the music supply all of the drama, okay? I mean, that's fine. It's just a question of whether or not the solo violin can balance with the other instruments. And I would say that it needs to be brought up dynamically, or that the winds need to be a little softer, right? Which is, I mean, it's something that would be balanced in performance anyway. But I'm not so sure, that just like theoretically speaking, this is the right balance. Just looking coldly at the score, it's not something that would be a big problem in rehearsal. But the conductor would have to look after it, and like basically tell the wind soloist, look, I want you to merge with the solo violin instead of playing over it. All right. There is also like the issue that you've adapted some of the piano style slurring right in here, and you've shortened it for the winds because, I mean, of course they are just playing little fragments of that opening melody. However, I feel that they are, you have to just imagine like what the bowing is like. Da, 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 da. Right, so is that what you want? Or do you want like things that are a little bit shorter and kind of more emphatic, like, down, up, right? Or up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Right? I mean, think about like that the bow is much shorter. It doesn't mean that the bow couldn't slur all of these, just fine. It's more a question of like, what is by slurring across the downbeat, do you rob that downbeat of any kind of special emphasis, right? But I mean, I really approve of you shortening the length of the slurs. That's really, really important. That's something that some people didn't do in their entries. Okay, and then bringing in bassoon here is really nice. You're kind of staying with that, that sort of soft background, that warm background color. Okay, and it's just really extremely simple, direct orchestration right in here. So really kind of no critiques there at all, right? I would say it's unnecessary to tie. Like, yeah, you have these kind of ties of like single notes or something within your groups of tremolo chords. So just like, I would just say leave out the ties, right? I mean, it's kind of nice to see like certain notes not changing pitch, but it kind of ends up being meaningless when you try to mix the two different approaches, either having ties or not having ties, right? So you're not having ties or slurs for your moving voices, but you're having ties for your static voices. And I just think that that's just too fiddly. It's too fussy. Just throw it out and just score everything just as as tremolos with no ties. Okay, and it just like is way easier to read for everybody. Now, going on, we go to the development, da 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 dum, da da da, right, and then the actual melody, da dum, right in the middle, right? Because the F sharp is a harmony note, right? And then da da da, the violas, and I really like okay, so all right, let's just talk about the general rather than the specific. Excuse me. Because but I will come back to the specific in a minute, okay, just to illustrate that point. Have you noticed that there have been evaluations in which I kind of commented on like the melody starting in the flutes all the time, or the basically just being really wind heavy and being almost like a wind band composition with a little bit of strings attached, or kind of coming back to the brass over and over again, kind of just made it more of a brass piece. But you notice in orchestral scoring, if you are relying on the strings a lot and the strings get the melody frequently and so on, there's like no problem, right? There's nothing about the music that makes you think, well, that's string heavy, right? Unless the winds and brass are not engaged at all, right? In which that's a different thing. But there certainly are no issues in like really grounding the interpretation amongst the strings. Okay, so absolutely no problems here. I would say, just to point out, if you've got a contrabassoon and you're trying to play softly along with your lower strings, then the instrument to double them with is either second bassoon or contrabassoon if you just want some seamless weight. Now tuba will add a certain kind of firmness to that low, to the very low pitches, and if it's added, it needs to be marked down a dynamic degree so that it doesn't overwhelm. So the way you've got this scored right now, you would really hear tuba more than anything else down there. Okay, but contrabassoon is the perfect partner for double basses, and it can just merge into them seamlessly. So that would be my recommendation, like as a trade-off, and then you can keep them at the same dynamic level without worrying about whether or not they'll blend. Okay. Now, so really just kind of looking at this scoring, and I'll comment some more about specific combinations in a second. The real problem that I'm seeing here is slurring, right? So do you want to take away the emphasis of the downbeat here, right? What if it were da da, right? Up, down, right? Because look, your other instruments, like your seconds, are playing, on every downbeat. They have a new bow on every downbeat. Okay, so just because you're tying across the bar with your cellos doesn't mean that everybody should ignore emphasizing, and think about here, da da, as opposed to where you scored it, da, right? So really think about like how, about the quality of melisma, right? Of like continuing the songful, quality that one voice that doesn't stop, that has no articulation in it, right? So there's no articulation on the downbeat, no articulation on the downbeat, no articulation on the downbeat. But here we get to a special case where you are slurring past mezzo staccato, right? So mezzo staccato should really be grouped under its own slur, and it shouldn't have a slur that continues on. Now, once again, this is the cost of just dropping piano style articulation slurring into an orchestral piece, right? Because it just really kind of doesn't make any sense. This should be one slur and then another slur, right? 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 I should actually sing the line that I'm thinking of. And then here you have the added problem. You have slurring over two voices, right, that are joined together. And then we get to the end here, and then you give another slur to the lower voice, which makes the slur over the second voice in this bar meaningless, right? So if you really wanted to do this, if you really wanted to preserve this with the slur going all the way across the bar here, then you would have to have separate voices in this bar with a slur underneath them going all the way across. Because starting the slur here, when the second voice essentially already has a slur over it, right, doesn't make any sense, right? So you'd have to have two separate voices with the slur under and one with a slur over if you really wanted to maintain that. But why maintain it? Cut it off at the nose and give your clarinets and bassoons the same articulation of mezzo staccato, and right, as opposed to ba and in the violins, right? So just really think about slurs, right? Don't just drop a piano slur into an orchestra part. Okay, but of course this is all fine, like the mezzo staccato, because it is one group of the same articulation with the slur over it, right? And that fits pizzicato just perfectly, right? Of course, like, once again, I'd recommend that this were contrabassoon. And actually, if you get to this point, you could even just go staccato on contrabassoon and don't even worry about mezzo staccato, right? Which is, in the context of the piano part, that's more of a piano thing, right? Okay, so here we've got, same problem here. Slurring past mezzo staccato into voices which split on a slur, right? So it's the same thing. So this is interesting, like the plus sign bracket, okay? And the standard thing is just to go plus, 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 right? And then O, right? Just a little open sign over the next appearance. So, that's cool. I guess that's a Dorico thing, and that is, I'm not saying that this is a standard, but it's getting used more and more often. All right. So, when we get to this point, just have to kind of look at the voicing of the chords. So here you're saying horn in F1, horn in F2, but that's actually not correct, is it? It should in the middle of this brace, it should just say horn in F. And if you have to mark them, you should say, 1, 2, 3, 4 in front of each of these staves. And in fact, really, you're not telling us a whole lot of information here at the beginning. How many flutes? How many oboes? How many clarinets? Bassoons 1 and 2? Right? I just need to know, right? How many trumpets in C? Well, there are 3 of them, right? So you need to put all that information here, right? On each flow, I guess, as Dorico would say. I may, if I don't get too busy this year, I may check out Dorico again. I was actually invited to be one of the original beta testers, as they would say here in New Zealand, beta testers in the States, and like there wasn't a manual you know, and I just had just enough time to work on it if I had had a manual, and then I was hoping to make some education courses for Mac Pro Video, but they're, you know, I mean, I just had too little time to flail around in a program that still had issues, right? And then some work came up and that I was offered, and I just could not turn that down. So, but if I do have a little bit, you know, if I have a few weeks here and there, and now that they've got a manual, I may pick it up again. Not as a beta tester, but as a, you know, as a client. Okay. So getting back to this. All right, just tell us, you know, how many of each winds and brass. That's really important. Okay, and you know, it's kind of strange here that you got a slur over this and not over that, right? So just really maybe proofread your slurs a little bit more. Okay, but this is all going to work, you know, this idea here. You know, lower winds, then horns accompanying sul tasto here. Okay, I would say piano, not pianissimo, right? Horns should be pianissimo. Strings should be piano, right? If you want those strings to be a pianissimo, the horns need to be triple P. All right, da 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 bum bum. I really like this. So it's just like all, you know, all heavy brass, all strings, all playing together. And as I said before, it kind of has like a kind of a little bit of a coarse imitative kind of a sound, right? Like it doesn't have the same suaveness of winds plus strings. It has kind of like a, yeah, he said what he said kind of a quality to it. I think that you need to balance this out, frankly. So if the dynamic has got to be mezzo forte, then the heavy brass should be mezzo piano, diminuendo to pianissimo. Okay? If you really want to blend here. The way that you've got this scored, you will basically hear the heavy brass, and there will be a tiny bit of character of strings to it. All right, so if that's what you want, that's what you're going to get. But if you want a balanced merged sound, then the brass need to come down 1 degree. Okay, I mean, especially starting off on higher pitches with your trumpets and trombones, they'll have a tendency to play out a bit. Not hugely, but you know, F sharp. I mean, you can. That is an easy note to balance, but still, you know, just given if you give the note its natural color, then it's going to be a fairly, you know, a fairly bright note. All right, so going on, boom da 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 da. So celesta. So look, if you want anybody to hear the celesta at all, okay, then you have to very carefully balance everything. There's a bit of dynamic mixing here, like pianissimo for your second bassoon, mezzo forte for your contrabassoon, and then, you know, mezzo forte for the other winds, and then you've got piano on celesta, right? Now maybe that is a reaction to how Dorico is playing back your celesta, you know, maybe nice and big. But frankly speaking, celesta is really a soft instrument, right? So if you really want to add like a line like this that is going to be heard, you should use glockenspiel, right? If this must be mezzo forte and you have to set everything up the way that it is, then use glockenspiel instead of celesta and mark it mezzo forte like everybody else. Okay, as it is here, like you could mark the celesta mezzo forte, and the celesta player could play what they feel is mezzo forte on their instrument, digging in with their fingers, but they will never really be louder than mezzo piano compared to the rest of the orchestra. So that is your challenge, right? So if you really want to effectively score celesta, the rest of the orchestra has to be like piano or mezzo piano. It has to be delicate, right? Because like as soon as they get big, even pushing a little bit on a few notes, the celesta disappears because it just, you know, it is the baby of the orchestra. Not a screaming, crying baby, but, you know, it just really cannot compete with the adults in the room. Okay? So just please keep that in mind. This is an interesting voicing that you've got in here of the oboes plus the clarinets with, you know, doubling the top voice for the first players, and then kind of like a chorale of oboes, you know, inside the clarinets, and then the clarinets below. That's really cool voicing. And then, bassoon on the bottom. Ba-da-da-da. And then here we go to da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so once again, think about slurs. Da 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 da. All right. Da da da. So is that, I mean, it just doesn't really feel natural, does it? So da da. How about da 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 da? You know what I mean? Like, is there a way to slur this more naturally? Like, just like really feeling. Now look at this. Like the winds. You seem to have thought about it here, right? About possibly articulating each of these separately, but you didn't for the strings. So I don't understand why not. Right? So just really, try to, just for the most effective, most direct kind of forceful phrasing, you really try to have everybody's slurring match, right? And that sometimes can be a little too brutal, which is why you'll see in Ravel, he'll have, winds slurring, like he'll have a big slur over his winds, and then have like little chopped up phrasing for the strings. But if you just really want, I mean, here's a direct place in the music, just Lili is expressing, she's having an emotional reaction to something, right? So, do we want to pussyfoot around here, right? Do we want to, to have some notes slurred across that and others not? And I mean, right? So just got to work that out, right? And just think of what is the most emphatic way to state that. Other than that, this is really nice. Clarinets inside of strings, and then eventually adding more to that. So this is kind of interesting that you're throwing in piccolo like just for a few beats here, a couple of bars, just kind of my sense is that that this will ring out a bit, right? It's going to be. It's going to surge. It's going to make the color here, the brightness, very surge, which I think is what you want. But it may surge a little farther than you think. All right. So I would just say caution right in there. And then ending with lower, like the bassoon family and the strings down here. So that's all really great. And then this, I really love the fact that you just do nothing but strings. Right. It's just really tasteful. The use of just having the basis of your orchestration be strings, and then using the colors and the and interactions of other groups, right, to give the ear relief and variety. And I think that's just a great approach. So look, if you're going to be that string centered, really work out your bowings, right? Da 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 da. Do you want da da da? Or da 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 da, or a da da da, or da da da. What's wrong with matching the articulation of your of the strings below, right? So slur to match the other strings, right? Maybe would be one way of approaching this. And I like and then you have your little resolution, which is fine. Okay, boom, da da da. Right, so we're just cutting the nose off any kind of emphasis on the downbeat. How about if there was no slurs till you got to here, da da da, right? And to in all parts. This is cool though, like oboes and octaves. This is where if you had an English horn, it would be great to throw one in. English horn plays octaves with oboe. I feel better than oboe plays octaves with oboe. But yeah, nice warm sound in here, and I love like the way you're bringing in the lower winds to harmonize, to be part of what's going on here. Yeah, so I'm not sure what you mean here by this is really strange. So you've got a tied note under, and then this playing, and then you've got this, and then so slur to a tenuto, right? that almost implies like portato, right? So like you just, you have a bowed note and then you have a that is pushing again in the bowing, in which case you should have two tenuto marks, right? If you really intend portato. And if you really do intend that effect and you intend this to be a tie and not there, then you should really split the voices here, right? So that the lower note should be a clear second voice if they're going to be slurred differently from the upper voices. Okay? All right. And, this is, of course, that's a gimme. Harp roll right in there. That's great. Yeah, and this is all fine. Little touch of tuba. You're kind of using tuba a lot, but it's kind of nice the way that you're playing like fifths here. You need to mark this pianissimo here, right? There's no marking at the entrance here. Just to kind of ask my, everybody, please maintain the original rehearsal marks that were in the template and in the video that I posted. Okay, really helpful to me. I know nobody intends any harm or anything, but I do need. It's not only is it easier for me to say, okay, here's the A section, there's the B section. When I'm evaluating things, but it also really helps people out there who have kind of worked their way up the ladder, have maybe didn't contribute as much as they felt they could have as a Patreon supporter, but we're really aware of the different demarcations of the rehearsal marks, right? And also the ones that I supplied were extremely logical in terms of your work being read someday by a conductor and orchestra. Okay, so please leave them in if you're exporting my template to Dorico or whatever. Just if Dorico doesn't understand Sibelius or Music XML rehearsal marks, if they're not being exported, then just put them in the way that I had in the original video. Okay. All right. So this is all good. Then you're bringing in horns right in here. A little touch of trombone. Okay, and from here we've got lower winds, horns, trombone, providing support here as the music climbs. And it's so here we're really seeing that we definitely have portato going on. So if you really do want portato in that previous part, you really have got to have tenuto marks at either end of the slur. Okay, and that just conveys the most meaning. And as we saw, it has to be two separate voices, right? Because you can't have one of them supplying something that is almost portato but not, right? Okay, and then all right, so pizzicato just before the beat. Okay, so you just have to know that if you have this, right, pizzicato just before the beat, then that is something that is going to require working out in the orchestra. So it's something that the rest of the orchestra will need to know, because you have the added dimension of the conductor who will be conducting ahead of the beat, right? So they'll be ahead of the beat, and the cellos will be ahead of the beat in their pizzicato, and that has the danger of throwing everything into complete chaos, right? Of people thinking, well, the cellos are coming in early, boy, that's irritating me, and then other people thinking, oh wow, Matt, I must really be off the beat here, because the pizzicato is coming in right as the conductor is conducting. So is he conducting ahead of the beat or is he conducting on the beat? All right. So the conductor is going to have to tell the orchestra, look, right here, from bar 35 onwards, the cellos are playing pizzicato grace note ahead of the beat, right? So it's going to be, ba 1, 2, 3, ba 1, 2, 3, right? So you just have to know that when you ask for something like this, that is going to be more work, not a huge amount of work. Actually, probably not that much work at all. But it does mean that the other players need to become engaged in the other person's part, and the conductor has to be a good explainer, right? If the conductor never explains it and you're working with a community orchestra, then watch out. Okay, but otherwise, as I was saying before, this is all working fine. Yeah, and at this point you have piccolo taking the top voice, right? So mezzo forte diminuendo to what, right? What's the destination? Piano? You should mark it. You should tell us where you end up here dynamically in every part. And especially since you're asking the piccolo player to do a little bit of a magic trick, which is to play softly and sensitively on a high F sharp. Right? So pretty much anything above E or F on the piccolo is going to have like a harder quality. It's going to, and in fact, like, I think one entry had a F sharp trill, right? Which brings in G sharp, which is very much a harder note, right? So like just things become hard, square, pointy, it's sort of like kind of like trying to cram a Lego into your ear, right? It has that kind of, slightly unpleasant quality. So it might be better to actually have, some string note playing that. If you really want a complete absolute transcription of the music as it is in the piano part, might be better to have like a bell instrument like celesta, or to have like artificial harmonics from your first violins. I mean, there are a bunch of different ways that this could be done. Like, for instance, okay, so here's an idea. What if the piccolo player were to play the same F sharp instead of going up an octave, and the first violins were to just go to an artificial harmonic on the same F sharp? So all that the first violinist has to do is to just activate the node up a fourth from the F sharp that they are holding down on their string, immediately getting a note that's 2 octaves higher, and the piccolo player can avoid going above E, right? Problem solved. You can go all the way down to pianissimo with that, and if you really want the kind of a gleaming finish to it, add a little celesta note on the same pitch of the artificial harmonic. Problem solved. All right. So look, just try not to assume that piccolo is going to sound soft and sensitive on its highest register, right? Because it will. Just the higher it gets, the harder it is to control the kind of whistling, kind of, percussive quality of it. All right. All right, now here we go with our da 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 dum ba ba bum 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 bum. And I really love the way that you throw this around and vary it, right? So you've got celesta here, you've got clarinets there, you've got oboes going da 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 da. Yeah. So I kind of miss the harp. I mean, I love this big gushing, and then then it doesn't gush anymore. It's like, hey, the well's run dry here, So like, I mean, I almost feel like, that maybe you felt that was excessive. If you did, I respect that, but I kind of feel that like we sort of pull the rug out from under when that disappears. Da 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 dum diminuendo, so this can come in bum 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 bum. Da 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 dum diminuendo, right? Because otherwise, mezzo piano, loud, playing over the, and then it's just really like you can hear the cutoff at the bar line as this drops out, right? Okay, da 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 dum. These little rose petals drifting down from above, they do not need to be. They do not need to be pianissimo. Just because they're pianissimo in the piano part doesn't mean they need to be pianissimo in the orchestra, right? What if you want piano crescendo diminuendo, pianissimo, piano, crescendo, and diminuendo to mezzo piano, and then the falling rose petals were piano. And amp it up a little bit more, and amp it up a little bit more here, right? It's fine. Just so long as the delicacy of the instruments that you score is not in question. Then you will have the delicacy even if you go up to mezzo forte in your little rose petals falling. Okay? The only big critique that I would have here is that it's just a little inconsistent in terms of articulation, right? So here you've got mezzo staccato and you've got legato with grace notes. Same thing here, right? And that's along to pizzicato. Then here you've got like no articulation style at all. It's just single notes, right? And kind of interestingly, the pizzicato kind of seems to, even though the part gets higher in the piano, it just seems to get lower towards the end. So yeah, I feel like you just need a little bit more work on this, Christian. So why would I tell people to put a little more work into one section or another in an orchestration challenge? You come and you go, you get your evaluation, and that's great, and then you move on to your other work. It's because I feel that the people who are working on the score should, even if it's just for their own satisfaction, that they should somehow finalize the work that they have done. And not for my sake, not to bring back to me and say, hey, Thomas, like, what do you think of it now? Because I don't have time. Like, that would involve, like, over 300 evaluations, right, of me looking at the score again. It just would kill me. I just can't, it's 146 is enough of a roster. I'm not going to say bad enough. It's great. Fantastic, but my life would never end as a person evaluating orchestration challenge scores. There'd be one for every day of the year if I looked at everything twice. No, the thing is for you to take this score and see if somebody will perform it or read it, right? And if that is the case, then I just, the little suggestions that I'm making here are intended for that purpose, right? If you can, if there is anything about this score that you could possibly improve, fix, and so on. Notice how the harp is getting louder, right? So what if it was piano, mezzo forte, and then forte, right? Because your melody is mezzo forte. So that the harp stands out better, starts to gush more. You can slowly notch up the horn as well, right? So I would just say you could make a big dynamic arc in here. You could bring up the volume of everything little by little, right? And then pull everybody back. And then leave us in a state of wonder, all right? I like the way that you keep the timpani in the background. That's really, really important. All right, but other than that, it all works fine. There's nothing, there's nothing to say about, oh, this is bad or that's good or, fix this, change that. It's, seems to be working fine to me. Okay, so that means that we can go on to our final section here. Okay, and again, once again, if you can maintain the original rehearsal marks just for the convenience of everybody else, that would really be appreciated, and also for your own. I feel those would be stronger. Okay, so we finally have got our solo violin, bum 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 bum, and here is where you need to really manage your dynamics, right? So this would be piano dolce, not pianissimo. And these fellows up here could be piano, okay? So just make them soft. And then celesta, that all works fine. Keep this one piano or pianissimo, okay? Okay, and then right in here, trombone, pianissimo. Just a thought. Maybe trombone, trombone can play sensitively and it can have a beautiful round tone behind something. But the player really needs a lot of I would say, you know, I would say pianissimo dolce, okay? Or even dolcissimo. All right, you just really have to instruct the player that you want a very soft, very beautiful sound there, because, you know, trombone can have a very kind of anxious sound in contrast to very gleaming textures, okay? When it's playing in its tenor register, which, by the way, you should drop in a tenor clef right here. However, this is perfect for, you know, right on this pitch is perfect for horns, right? I mean, like a solo horn, you would not, you know, you could just say piano dolce or whatever, or pianissimo dolce. Okay, I like the combination with the harp though. Harp should be up to mezzo piano if it wants to play, if it wants to compete at all, or even mezzo forte, right? Do not worry about like slightly over marking your harp dynamics, because that it is, you know, it's like having a big guitar in the orchestra, right? It can't compete most of the time, right? So don't be afraid to tell it to play louder. Okay, so you know, what's wrong with just scoring two dotted half notes in a row, right? You get exactly the same thing as opposed to just having the, you know, LV kind of unfinished tie marks. Just, you know, just score 2 bars of, you know, that's the harpist will not bother even reaching over to cut things off. They will know that they, you know, there's just really no need to throw that in there. Okay? Yeah, and then you just end with a little harp and pizzicato and timpani. The harp probably won't even be heard here, right? Unless it's mezzo forte. Because of just like, you know, pizzicato on low strings on their long strings, right? Plus bass drum, right? Basically, the way that it's set up, it's pretty much going to obliterate the harp unless the harp is marked up. And I would even like possibly just say like add a tenuto mark, right? So it's a very firm note that they cut off. Now this, you know, if you want to talk about like things that will die out, this note will probably die out by right around here. So you might as well just make it this long and don't even bother with the tie going forwards. Alrighty, so those are my opinions about your piece, and I'm stuck to them. No, I mean, no, it's really was really a great piece of scoring here for me to look at and to talk over with you. And yeah, look, I mean, look, Christian, I mean, I have watched your orchestration improve, and I've seen your contributions and some of your scores and things like this. I just think you're getting better and better, you know, and so just so happy, you know, that you are a part of this massive journey for me of really great scores, you know, one after the other. And, you know, and even the scores that, like one that we saw yesterday, where somebody was really, you know, just like trying for the first time, made a sincere effort, even if they, you know, they needed a lot of help. You know, that is also, you know, the courage is something that I acknowledge. The, you know, even if the craft is not quite there yet, right? So I just really appreciate you being a part of everything, and, you know, and your support of the channel and the work that you put into this. I just really, you know, that means a lot to me. So thank you so much, and you know, and I would really love to see what you come up with in the future with the 2021 Orchestration Challenge, which will be a complete left turn from this kind of scoring. I'll see everybody in the next video.